Hishi Muskogee and all of our non-Muskogee friends. Okay, I just received in the mail what was supposed to be a mint condition copy. You see from the damage on it and the stickers that aren't supposed to be there. That this is not a mint copy off of eBay. It claims to be a used like new copy. Not like new at all. Of Early History of the Creek Indians and Their Neighbors by John R. Swanton. Okay. Now, I got it for a good price, so I'm not going to, crap on it too much, but just the fact that they claimed it was mint, I had to give them 3 out of 5 stars. Not only was it not mint because of the creases, it has multiple stickers on it. That's not a mint copy. I did get free shipping, but I still paid about $26 for this, which is not a bad price to pay. So, I see it generally selling online for like 30 to 40 bucks plus shipping. So I'm not going to be too much of a jerk, but I did take pictures and I did put them on the eBay listing, or the response, the feedback, because I'm coming from a comic book collecting background. If you say it's mint, it better not have a bunch of these creases on it. Okay. Anyway, let's get to the meat and potatoes. So this book, I have other books that I've shared on this channel. I have the Creek Indian Medicine book from Swanton, which is interesting. This book, kind of like with that book, but that book has a little more, from what I could tell so far, more recent anecdotes. Like, we're talking, he interviewed people or took recent letters that were unpublished and put them in his account. This one, he's taking a lot of the older anecdotes from Milford, from others. Like he's getting a bunch of quotes from like Spanish, colonizers in the Southeast, and taking their extensive quotes, going several pages long in small print. So that kind of stuff's happening here. So expect to see a lot of that. If you get a copy of this, it's useful. But he goes over the different tribes that made up the Confederacy, like the Abika, which is the Arbika, okay? The Atasi is what we think of it as Artusi. He mentions them as well. Holiwahli, or Holiwahali. I think that might be the Thiwatli tribal town, or the ancestral group thereof. The Hilibi, which is the Hilabi, the Ufala, Wakokai. Yeah, the Atasi, the Atasi, that's the same as the Artusi. Okay, just FYI. The Kolomi, Foshatchee, the Kanhatchee. Those are the Wewoka. It has they might have been originally the Wetumpka people. He goes with the Kialeji. The Pekana, which I believe are probably the Pecan Tallahassee tribal town, the ancestral root to that. I need to read all this because I haven't read all of it yet. He goes over the Okchai, and this reminds me of something my grandmother told my mom. She said that our family comes from Catfish Pond, Alabama. So now our tribal town matrilineally is Greenleaf. So Silanubby. But I believe it comes from Okchai, or it's kind of a related group. Basically, see, he quotes Adair, one one of the other authors. He quotes Hawkins, Benjamin Hawkins, and he goes over a bunch of the stuff here. Some of the history I'm not really going to get too deep into, other than the fact that the Okchayachi, well, Okchayachi, yes, was that little Okchai? I mean, I don't know. So yeah, besides them, there's a bunch of settlements that came out of Okchai. The most prominent and probably the most ancient was the Tlatogalga, the fish place, from which the trader's name of Fish Pond is derived. So I remember living in Oklahoma and seeing Fish Pond. I remember looking at the census records going, oh, Fish Pond, is that Catfish Pond? Right? So I always kind of wondered if there was a connection there. So Fish Pond occurs first in Bartram, but is often applied to the Okchai Indians generally, and Tlatogalga appears first as a distinct settlement in Swan's List in 1791. And then, oh yeah, Hawkins describes it as such. The Tlatogalga, from Thlotlo meaning fish and Ulga meaning all, called by the traders fish ponds. It is on a small pond-like creek, a branch of Ulkahatchee, which joins Tallapoosa 4 miles above Okfuskee on the right side. The town is 14 miles up the creek. The land about it is open and waving. The soil is dark and gravelly. The general growth of trees is the small hickory. They have reed in the branches. Hannah Hale resides here. This is 1799, by the way. Hannah Hale resides here. She was taken prisoner from Georgia when about 11 or 12 years old and married the head man of this town, by whom she has 5 children. This woman spins and weaves and has taught two of her daughters to spin. She's labored under many difficulties, yet by her industry has acquired some property. She has 1 Negro boy, which means she owned a slave, a horse or 2, 60 cattle, and some hogs. She received the friendly attention of the agent for Indian affairs as soon as he came into the nation. He furnished her with a wheel, loom, and cards. She has an orchard of peach and apple trees. Nice. Having made her election at the National Council in 1799 to reside in the nation, because, you know, she was a captive, right? The agent appointed Hopotle Hajo to look out for a suitable place for her, to help her remove to it with her stock, and take care that she receives no insults from the Indians. I believe Hopotle Hajo was her husband. He's referred to as far-off warrior. Hopotle Hajo actually means crazy good child, but he's often given the name far-off warrior. I'm pretty sure this is the same dude. I've seen it pop up on a bunch of genealogy groups, websites. So I wanted to read that, but going down here, evidently this is one of, let's see, I'm skipping slightly ahead. Evidently this is one of the 2 fish pond towns mentioned in the census list of 1832. That's the Parson Nabbit Roll. There's a square ground in the name in Oklahoma at the present time, but those who formed it were not direct descendants of the people who formed the old Tlatogalga town. When the removal took place, all the Okchai Indians came together and established one square ground near the present Hannah, Oklahoma. Later, as the result of a fission in the tribe brought about by the Civil War, part moved away and settled near Okemah sometime after 1870. They revived the old term Tlatogalga, which they have since employed. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, because the L's, it's spelled La Logalga, but it's Tlato, like Tlala, right? So, yeah, they revived the old term Tlatogalga, which they have since employed. So this is claiming that the people at the fish pond ceremonial grounds are not the original Tlatogalga. They are Okchai people, but they're not the original Tlatogalga people. Now, I think that's probably not totally true, and I'll explain why as I read the next paragraph or so. We'll focus on just the next paragraph. Asila Nabi, that's Greenleaf. was founded later than the first Tlatelolco and was so named because it was first located in a place where Ilex Varmatoria was to be gathered. Now that's the black drink or a C. Some call it the white drink. Anyway, we do not find the name in print until we come to the census roll of 1832. There's a square ground in Oklahoma, so-called, but as in the case of Tlatelolco, it has no historical continuity with the older settlement. It is a result of a later fission. Now, I disagree with that. Here's why. Now, I've gone over in the past eyewitness accounts of the Trail of Tears, the Creek Trail of Tears, specifically that of James Scott, a full-blood who was a boy on the Trail of Tears, who remembered babies being smashed against, Indian babies being smashed by U.S. soldiers against trees. Okay? And which also happened to Cherokee as well. So this was a common thing, apparently. So, yeah. Sorry, it always kind of takes me back a little bit as I just think about that horrible stuff. James Scott took 20 years to recover from his PTSD. I mean, he had nightmares for 20 years after the Trail of Tears had ended. So, I don't think he had any kids. I could be wrong, but I don't think he had any kids. Jean Chaudry, who did a book on Creek medicine ways, she did it in a very academic fashion, by the way. It didn't seem like a spiritual text by any stretch. It was more like, it was very academic, the way she did it. But she mentions Greenleaf. I believe she belonged to Greenleaf, and James Scott belonged to Greenleaf. Okay, I think he died in 1950, 1940 something. He died around the middle of the 20th century. So he lived for over 100 years. He lived for over 100 years after the Trail of Tears had ended. So he was a living example of what had taken place. He belonged to Greenleaf. So did she, as a descendant. And she referred to him as like uncle or great uncle or something to that effect. I believe Jonadab Chaudry is her son. Okay. So if he was Greenleaf then and later on was still Greenleaf, it's not hard to see that he wouldn't be the only Greenleaf person who would have made his way from, apparently as a branch of the Oakchai people, from the 1832 people onward to the later 1800s, let's just say, branch, or the whenever this book was published, 1830, 1930, I think. Sorry, my bad. Let's see, because he's living the early 20th century, 1922. Okay, so he did a lot of work, and he did a lot of work, this being John Swanton, he did a lot of work gathering earlier accounts and also gathering present information. So when he's talking about this, he has some degree of knowledge, but at the same time, this is one instance where I disagree with him, because you already had, even after this book was published, like a couple decades later, you still had this James Scott who was alive, who saw the Trail of Tears, who was a Greenleaf person, who was still a Greenleaf person. Okay, and I could be wrong, but I believe Greenleaf is still an active ceremonial grounds. I reasonably believe it still is, and I would say that it probably does have continuity with the original settlement of Asilenabi. So, even though the babies were all killed, basically, according to James Scott, it doesn't mean the parents didn't later on have kids. It doesn't mean that other kids that might have lived didn't grow up and have children that became Greenleaf people. But was there a fission? Possibly. And on a personal note, like, I can't trace my female line definitively back to the Parson Abbott roll. I could trace maternal ancestors, obviously, because I'm a Skokie in the maternal line. But I cannot definitively trace beyond my third great-grandmother, Martha, other than to her father. I don't have her mother's name. I don't have her mother's father's name. He probably would have been listed, most likely, if he was alive, as a head of household in 1832, roughly, okay? Because she would have been born, let me see, because Jacob Knight, my third great-grandfather, her husband, the father of Sally, my great-great-grandmother, Jacob was a child during the Civil War as a Laurel Creek refugee. That means he would have been in Kansas. He and his grandfather, Hopewith Harjo, a different Hopewith Harjo than the one I mentioned earlier, the aforementioned, the husband of Hannah Hale, okay? The name was not uncommon. There are several Hopewith Harjos for sure on the Parson Abbott roll in 1832. So, Jacob Knight was born around 1849, I believe, if memory serves. That puts him a decade plus after the Trail of Tears had happened. Okay. He would have been a few years old when his father had passed away, or he would have been, yeah, like, he would have been a kid. Okay. If I'm remembering the date of death for his father correctly. In any case, let's just say Martha and Jacob were on the same age, 1849, 1850, 1851, whatever, around that time is when she would have been born. Her father was a soldier named Waxy Harjo. Okay, Waxy Harjo would have been, I mean, I don't know how old he would have been. Actually, I kind of do know how old he would have been, because there's multiple Waxy Harjos in the same role. 3 at the same age, another guy was 10 years older, and anyway, I can do the math on that one later, but I will say that he would have been obviously a generation before Jacob and Martha, right? So he could have been a teenager or a young man on the Trail of Tears. He could have been a head of household himself. I don't know. As far as his father-in-law, his wife's father, who may or may not have been Greenleaf. Okay, let's take that into consideration. That if it's all matrilineal, then Martha's mother would have been Greenleaf. That doesn't mean her father was, and her father would have belonged to his own town, and would have been listed as the head of household there. Which means that unless I can find a better paper trail connecting 1832 to Martha through her mother, okay, it's going to be really hard to verify any connection to Greenleaf on the rolls. Even if I read the entire census for that town, which I've done from 1832, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to guarantee definitively that any of these people are my ancestors, because I don't know their names at that time. Martha wouldn't have been born yet, and her father would not have necessarily belonged to Greenleaf. So these are the things that I think about when I go through the books like this, and I see the opinions of very educated men like John Swanton. He was very educated, no doubt, but I think that he misses a few of the puzzle pieces along the way. So, and I've managed to capture some of these puzzle pieces. So, not illegitimizing the guy, I'm just giving more perspective here. But I before I go on any further with any of this stuff, I just want to say that this is good for academic purposes. Don't believe everything that's in it necessarily, even if the information is mostly correct, which it probably is. There's going to be little pieces that you have to kind of figure out from other sources too. But he did a lot of work, and he should be respected and appreciated by the tribe for what he did. And I appreciate what he did. Anyway, I'm going to stop for now. I'd like to come back later and read this in more detail. I just got this today. So I'll let y'all know if I find more cool anecdotes that I want to share with you. But or if any of you have any requests of what you want me to read. There's Yuchi information, there's Tokabachi, there's the mentions of the Natchez, there's Shawnee a little bit. It goes for a while about the Yuchi, to be honest. But, I mean, getting into Spanish records and everything, it's crazy. Like, it goes on for a long time. A long time. Okay? So, anyway, that's it for now. No for watching, and Haram Chichatlis.